I remember being a busboy in my uncle's restaurant, and I was carrying a whole bunch of dishes. So just I was loaded up, and I had to go around this corner to be able to drop those dishes off. And there was this really tall, big country guy standing there. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, can I get around you?" And he said, "There's no excuse for you, boy."
Ryan, I'm so excited to chat with you. We have never actually spoken before. I've had a few guests on my show that I've never spoken with, and it's actually turned into some of my favorites because I can't guide you. I know nothing about you. So for all of the listeners out there that also don't know you or don't know you that well, tell us a little bit about you.
Ah, yes. So, what I often tell people about me is so I got my master's in IO psychology when I was a youngin. And so I tell everybody I'm a business psychologist. And what I tell people, they're like, "What does that mean? Like, what do you mean you're a business psychologist?" And I was like, "What it is I went to school and learned a lot about humans and human behavior and the hundreds of years of research that we know about human beings. And I take that and I translate that into the work environment. So, how do I make individuals, teams, leaders, executives, and a lot of times processes better in organizations so that those organizations can be better at what they do?" Like, that's really what I do. That's who I am. It's the crux of kind of why I got into the world that I did and why I really love learning leadership development and talent development.
Okay, now I know why I'm drawn to you. So I also studied organizational psychology. It was still called industrial psychology when I did it,
Hmm.
and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So yeah, that is where I started. So I always say I actually do what I studied. So do you.
Yep,
You
so do
actually
I.
work
Yeah.
in what you studied. Very few people do that. So very cool. All right. Now we're going back in time to young you. I always ask, what is that first dollar, that first piece of money, that taste of independence that you ever had?
Ooh, the first dollar, the first test of independence that I really had. So I remember when I was young, I think I was probably just about to turn 15, 16. My dad had dropped the transmission in one of our cars and told me, "Hey, you can have it as your first car if you go and get the money to fix it." And so I was working at my uncle's restaurant. They were in the restaurant business. So I
Mhm.
was actually a busboy for the first time when I really started getting my independence, having my money, getting that first car, and then I think the independence that comes with having a car when you're young,
Mm.
like being able to go and do your things. Like, I lived in this really small town in northern Indiana. I grew up in Chicago, and then my stepmom moved us. So I was all about like getting out of the little town I was in. Like, most people just, did the same little loop with their car, like, and stayed in town. I could not do that. I needed to leave. So that was the first time that I really got, I think, my independence. Once I got that car fixed and I could leave and go hang out with my friends, go to all the surrounding towns where I met a lot of my friends and girlfriends and others throughout the years, and even worked outside of town. I just refused to really like let everybody be constantly understanding what was going on with me and knowing all my business, because I just didn't want to do that. And in small little towns in the
Mhm.
Midwest, that is what it's like. They will know your business if you want them to know it and if you don't want them to know it. So I was just like, I am not going to be there. So that was, I think, the first time I really started making a little money and getting out of town. And then I went and got a job at Fazoli's in the town over, because again, I didn't want to really hang out with people there. I made some friends that used to let me stay in their house on the weekend. So I'd leave my house on like a Thursday or Friday night after work, after school, and I would never come back until like Sunday afternoon.
Wow, that is, gosh, I I hear you. I was 16 and I got a little scooter, like a little 120 cc, that's like that like and I
Yep.
used to take that thing on the highways and leave. So I get that. Yeah.
Well, you were
It's so
brave
dangerous.
to get that on the
Yeah,
highway.
I know. I'm like, what were my parents thinking? They didn't even do that. They knew where I was going. It was like a 40-minute on the highway, like insane. But yes, I get the leaving parts very much. All right. So if you were a busboy, you have some stories because serving people, serving customers, just being customer facing, um, it can be great and it can be awful. So
Mhm.
tell us a story that you remember.
The one that sticks with me to this day that I think I still tell a lot of people about, and I think this gets into the idea of like, I think why I think it's important to treat people with respect. I remember being a busboy in my uncle's restaurant, and I was carrying a whole bunch of dishes. So just I was loaded up, and I had to go around this corner to be able to drop those dishes off. And there was this really tall, big country guy standing there. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, can I get around you?" And he said, "There's no excuse for you, boy." And I just was a little floored, quite honestly. I'm like, seriously, like, is all of that is really that important? And I was like, wow. But I remember to this day that still sticks
Mm,
in my mind, just this idea of like, why would you say that to someone? Why would you say that to, quite honestly, a child? I mean, what, I was like
mm,
maybe 14, 15 when I was bussing tables
mm,
there. I'm like, why would you say that to somebody? So I think just the idea of treating people with respect and really caring about people, and you don't know. I think, and I've seen this even so much in the last couple of weeks. You just don't know what's going on in people's lives, and so like,
mhm,
why treat them horribly like that? So I think that really stuck with me, just being treated that way in that moment
mhm,
of like,
mm.
I am never going to, or I strive to never do that to anybody else.
Yeah, yeah. Those early lessons can really gut punch us in a way.
Mm-hmm.
That because yes, how can someone talk to you like that? It's unbelievable. And years later, you still remember that incident,
It's the
right?
only
It's
thing I remember from working there. Like, besides that, I had a friend
yeah,
that I really thought was fun that I liked. But
yes,
beyond that, that is the
yes.
only thing I remember.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it can really, and I wonder if he even knows the impact or thought twice about it.
No, no, I'm sure he hasn't.
Oh, yeah. All right. So after that, now your freedom, you have this car that you paid for and you feel all good about that. What comes next for you? Did you start studying? You said when you were a youngin, so I'm assuming you went straight to college.
I did. I went straight to college. So if you asked me from 6 to 18, I would have told you I was going to be a chiropractor. Like
Oh,
I even like
wow.
interned at the chiropractic office. I had asthma when I was younger, so one of the only things that really helped me was chiropractic. Besides like your normal inhaler, I would end up in the
Mm,
hospital every once in a while. And then my dad also was very diligent about me working out and lifting. Like I was probably the only kid in the neighborhood that was like, my dad's like, "Did you do your lifting? You got to do that first before you go hang out and go ride bikes with your friends." Um, so, which was good because he taught me a lot of discipline. He was also a martial arts
yeah.
teacher, and that helped a lot too. But I was always that kid that loved like chem lab and all of those. I was the chem lab assistant. I loved all of everything biology when I was in high school. So I went to undergrad, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a chiropractor. So I went in. Most of my first 2 semesters there was all biology classes, but by the end of it, I was like, eh, I don't really know that this is what I want to do. And my professors were, quite honestly, I didn't really like them that much. And I was like, I can't see myself doing this for another 3 years. But I had always liked psychology. I remember that was a class that I had taken in undergrad that I really, really enjoyed. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to explore switching my major to psychology. So I had some conversations and then did that, changed it over to psychology. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do yet. Like, because I knew, okay, I liked psychology, but I was pretty sure I didn't want to be a teacher, and I didn't necessarily want to be a clinical psychologist, which is what everybody was pushing me towards. Go get your PhD and become a clinical psychologist. Go get your PhD and come back and teach. And I was like, I don't want to really do any of those things. And then I ran across IO psychology. I ran across the industrial organizational psychology, and I was like, ding, 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 ding. I was like, okay, this is it. I'm like, in the business, it's very practical. It's science practitioner focused. Again, it's about helping businesses and people, do better and be better. And I was like, oh, this feels right to me. And so that's, once I knew that, I, did the rest of my undergrad. I loved my undergrad experience. Leadership was a big, big part of that. So I was an RA on campus for 3 years when I was an undergrad. I was a peer counselor in our counseling office on campus. I ran the on campus movie station. My roommate at the time ran the radio station. So between him and I, we ran all of media on campus. And then towards my later years in school, I was actually the president of Psi Chi on campus as well. And I think I did the first research that got approved by IRB at the college as well, which was kind of cool. So there was a lot. I really loved undergrad, did quite a bit during that time.
Mm.
But that's again, I knew I wanted to go IO psychology. So at that point, I started looking for like grad programs, and I knew I needed to get back to a bigger city because I grew up in Chicago, then moved to this tiny little town in Indiana, and then went to a little bit bigger town in Evansville, Indiana. But I'm like, okay, I need to probably keep going to another bigger town. And so I started looking at St. Louis and a couple other places as options to really look at grad school.
Okay. As you're talking, I'm thinking it's actually very rare that people love what they studied. Again, we have a lot of similarities actually, because I also loved what I did. It was the first time I was good at anything. High school, I was good at biology, sucked at everything else. Went to college, thrived, did so well. I was, top 15%, all of that. And that love, what do you think? I don't even know my question here, but I'm just thinking younger people, if they think, it's not feeling off, but this is what I've wanted to do since I was 6 to 18. How do I pivot? What gave you I guess, the guts, the courage, the thought even to change at that stage? You had enrolled and all of that stuff. And because I want more people to know that it's awesome if you find something that you actually love. So yeah, what got you to switch?
I think I've always trusted my instincts. I think that's probably a big part of it. So my mom died when I was 6. And my dad, it was just my dad and I for a long time until he got remarried when I was like 12 or 13. So I was a kid that had to grow up pretty quickly. I also, I think because of that, I was always a pretty intelligent kid. I was always a kid that I think was also very emotionally intelligent and kind of understood and how to work with my friends. Like I was always the one in the group that people came to when, something was going on in the group or someone was having something in their life and they needed someone to talk to. I was kind of that person for them. So I've kind of always trusted my instincts a lot. I've had to trust my instincts quite a bit. And we'll get into that later as we talk about like my career because I had to trust my instincts a lot during my career as well. So I knew in my heart of hearts that continuing to go down the biology path just was not going to be the right thing for me. And so I wanted to make sure I was thoughtful about it, but I was thoughtful and then I pivoted. And then when I pivoted, like I'm in. So I guess that's part of it for me too, which maybe is not how everyone is built, is like when I'm in. Like the book, that was I've and we'll talk about that later, but I mean that was something that literally came up in a weekend. And all in one weekend, I had pulled some information off of online that I had already written. I already had 10,000 words, wrote the introduction for the book, figured out what to call it, bought the website domains, like all in one weekend. So when I say I'm in on something, like I'm in on something. I go 100%. I don't usually drift too much once I've made my mind up that a direction is the way that I need to go. So I've just learned to trust myself. And I think people need to learn to trust themselves probably a little bit more. And also just I look at a lot of what I do as experiences. Like I want to have that experience. Experiences drive me. They even drive me in my career. Like the decisions I've made throughout my career was I wanted a certain set of experiences and I was going to find a place where I could get those experiences. And that's what drove me. It's what I call intentional flexibility. I wanted to be intentional about the experiences I've wanted throughout my career, but I also wanted to be flexible enough that I might go down a different path and I'd be okay with that.
Oh, I love that. I need more of that in my life. Love it. Intentional flexibility. That's something I might need to write down on a poster. That's just have it in front of me the whole time. So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that answer. I really do feel a lot of people just go on the path that they think they're meant to be on, even though it's not feeling right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, trusting your gut, that can be underrated sometimes.
That's
All
fair.
right. So yeah, so you studied your undergrad, great experience. You got involved in everything. You were just
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. That sounds like so much fun. And then you were looking for your post grad, right? If I'm
Yep.
not
Yeah.
mistaken.
So looking for my post
Where
grad,
did that lead you?
And so I ended up in St. Louis. I had applied to a PhD program here and a master's program here in the St. Louis area. Did I just missed the PhD program, which in the grand scheme of things was a good thing. Like, and it's weird to say that, but like they only took 4 students that year, and I was number 5, and they didn't take me, which was fine. I ended up going to the master's program at SIUE here in Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, in the St. Louis area. And so that I really loved that program. It was a science practitioner program. So we went and not only just learned about all the things that we do in the IO field, but we did it. So if you took a survey class, you went and you did it. You partnered with an organization. You actually did the survey, sat down with the board or whoever you needed to, give them the information, give them guidance and advice about potential things that you might want to do next. And so for every type of class that we took, we had to do that on top of like 2 internships during it. And of course, all the things that come with that, a stats class every single semester. And I did a
Oh,
20-hour TA internship in the career development department while I was in grad school as well. So busy, busy, busy. Like I remember
mhm.
MBA students taking occasionally some of our IO site classes. I don't know if you had this experience or not. And then they never took more than one because they were like, this is a lot. And I'm like, and I
Yes.
have 2 of these and a stats class. And
Mhm.
they're like, yeah, you guys have it easy. I've taken a couple of your MBA courses. You've got it super easy. Like, you don't know what it is to really put a lot of effort into a course, quite honestly. Like, you guys just
Yeah.
get up, you show up, you take your tests, you might write a paper or two, and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
we do it. And so,
Yes.
really enjoyed my program. It was the start of what a lot of my rest of my career would look like. So there was 7 women in the program and me in the year that
Mhm.
I was in, and then all 3 of my professors were women. So it was a
Mhm.
bunch of women and me because I'm a little bit of a minority in my field, quite honestly. To be a man in HR and especially in learning and leadership development and IO psychology, like there's only so many of us.
Yeah. Yeah. But I am glad you're here because we can do with balance sometimes. So, oh, and yes, that is so true. In South Africa, when I took my post grad, we merged. So BAs, Bachelor of Arts, and then the BComs, the business side, we merge and then do the post grad in industrial psychology. And they could not write. Like I was the top of the class because I could write these, long 20-page essays and, putting all the things together. So yeah, that was fun. That was fun. So you just reminded me of that. Okay, so post grad, you did your masters, you didn't do your PhD, which you say was a good thing. Is there more to that story?
Yeah, I think when I got done with my master's, I was so ready to get out and work.
Hmm.
And I was ready to get out in the field and start doing the actual work of what we do. And I think if I would have had another 2 or 3 years that I would have had to go through to get my PhD on top of that, I would have went nuts. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, and based on what I wanted to do, like I never really wanted to work at an assessment company. I didn't really want to work at
Hmm.
like a big consulting company. And so getting my PhD, I don't think was going to be the thing for me. Like it was going to be what I needed. Like I wanted to work in an organization doing what we do.
Hmm.
Most places you don't need a PhD, and having a PhD isn't really going to get you much farther than having your master's in those scenarios. So I was like, you know what? It's probably the right thing for me. So that
Hmm.
was wonderful.
Okay, awesome. And then what was your first adult job, your first
So my first
real job?
this you're gonna love this, and a lot of people do. So my first job out of school was the HR generalist for the Humane Society of Missouri. So I worked in
Okay,
animal welfare as my first job outside of school. So like 24,
nice.
25, definitely didn't have any, couldn't even grow this back then, had a lot more up here. Um, fresh faced 25-year-old just got a 24, 25-year-old just got out of grad school. And I was running the HR department because their director, who had been at Purina for 30 years, was part time. Like, so she was like a 20-hour director. And like, I was the full time face of HR in this organization.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That must
So
have been a steep learning curve. Tell me more about that.
it was. So I did everything like there. I built a comp program from the ground up. I was doing recruiting and figuring out how to recruit. Their turnover when I started was over 100%. And in animal welfare, that's not crazy. I got it
Oh,
down to 60%, actually 50% by the time I left, the
wow.
turnover.
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah,
Well done. That's
changed their
like,
on. It was massive, but
yeah.
it was because they had never really had anyone with my background. I mean, my back then, not a whole lot of people knew what an IO psychologist was. My
Mm,
director didn't know what an IO psychologist was. She's like, "Look, I kind of took a chance on you, and I'm glad I did because I had no idea what I was getting. No idea. I mean, I did their first employee engagement survey. They didn't even really calculate turnover, so I was had to tell them that they had 100% turnover because they didn't really
mm,
know they had 100% turnover.
yes.
I did comp, I did benefits, which I had never done before, lots of employee relations conversations, and a lot of HR business partner work. So, I mean, I did everything because I was in a small little started a safety program. I was learning about all of it, which was great because that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted to like jump in and do it all. The one thing that was nice about that type of culture too was there was a president, a vice president, my boss, and there was this fairly small management team. So, quite honestly, if I got the president, vice president, my boss on board, I
Mm,
could do what I wanted to do.
nice.
like
Yeah.
that was it was the easiest job from a influencing perspective. Like I had to influence really three people, sometimes a whole management team, and then
Mm.
that was it. Then it was like, okay, Ryan, go do what you're going to do.
That sounds like the dream.
It
That
was
is
pretty
so good.
amazing. It was pretty
Yeah.
amazing. If only the paycheck was as great as
Of
as good as the work.
yes, yes.
And I literally could go take a break and pet a puppy or a kitty. I mean, how amazing is that for
Mm.
like
Oh,
to be able
good
to
for the soul.
debrief and get rid of your stress by going to pet an animal. I also went on rescues, which was something that was interesting, which I would have never expected to do in my life. So when we see like
Yeah.
hoarders on TV and and they've got all the animals there and like a humane society or someone like that or an ASPCA is going in and like to take care of all the animals and get them out of there. I've done those. I've smelled
Oh,
those. I've lived those.
oh, oh, yeah. I have
And so I
never
don't need
thought
to
of
watch
that.
Hoarders. I've never watched Hoarders because I don't need to. Like I've seen
Yes,
it in
you've lived the
person.
real
I've
life.
lived it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just don't need to see that, and I don't need to
No.
watch that show.
What was
But
the like? I mean, people listening must be curious because I am. Tell us one story of,
oh gosh, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's like going to these places. So Missouri is actually in the United States. Missouri is the worst state in the country for puppy and kitty mills.
Really?
Yeah, back
Oh.
when and I don't know if these stats are still correct, but back when I was working there, and again, that was almost 20
Mhm.
years ago now, 1 in 4 animals in a pet shop probably came from a Missouri puppy mill
Oh, wow.
because there were so many rural areas and the laws were so lax here that I mean, I
Mm.
would go to places where you would walk into a property and there might be like 200 animals like in cages, you know, not really being taken care of very well, cats, dogs, and like just hundreds of animals, hundreds. And the things I saw, I don't even want to talk about on here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but then it was
Mm.
also the camaraderie of all of it. Like it's all these people that's when you knew they trusted you when they invited you to go to the rescues.
Okay.
Like when they
Yeah.
trusted you as a human being and got to know you and like this person's a good person, like that's when they would invite you on those rescues. But that was like
Mm.
talking about seeing the epitome of teamwork. That is when I would see the epitome of teamwork when you've got
Mm.
50 people going out to a site like this. Like,
Yeah.
and then coming back and having to process all those animals and take care of them and
Yes.
give them
Oh.
some of the early things that they need from a health perspective. Like, there is, I mean, I've worked at a lot of places and seen a lot of teamwork, but there's nothing like the teamwork when you're going out
Mm.
for an animal welfare rescue.
Wow. Yeah. I bet I was just thinking you must cringe at the word synergy or, that, oh, all of that fake stuff that I'm sure just like, I know what teamwork really is. Let
Mm-hmm.
me help you. Yeah. Wow. All right. Sure. I'm processing that because if you would have asked me to guess, I would have guessed like 20 animals maybe at the most would have been out there for me. So, yeah, wow. All right. So, what happened after that?
Yeah,
How
so
long were you there?
I was there for about 4.5 years. So I've
Okay.
stayed at most of my
Yeah.
companies around the four. I've never been at a company longer than five, but stayed there about 4.5 years.
Mhm.
Left there and actually started working at a company called Brown Shoe. So like a fashion company, which I love fashion. It's a shoe
Mhm.
wear. It's a footwear company. They own all the famous footwear stores and a whole bunch of wholesale brands. And at the time, they also had a company called Shoes.com, so they had their own kind of online business as well.
Mhm.
So I did that for about 4.5 years. Started out originally as kind of like a junior HR business partner there, but about 6 months in, my boss left, and so I inherited the assessment process, the talent review process, the performance management process, on top of still doing HR business partner work. So I was doing both of those things for about 2.5 years. It was nutty, and but it was great because they didn't really have like an OD department yet then in the department.
Mhm.
But I was kind of one of the first employees in that because I was doing that. At some point, they did about 2.5 years in, took the HR business partner part away from me, and then let me focus on the rest of kind of the
Mhm.
talent and OD work that I was doing. So that was probably my first like real full time like OD job was back then.
Mhm. Oh,
But I also
nice.
was doing things like helping them think through, because of our IOSEC background, they again had never had, also another place, my second job, never had an IOSEC person. So
Mhm.
didn't really know what to do. Like I also, yes, did the assessment process and work with the assessment company, but I also was their kind of metrics and analytics guy because they'd never really had anyone like that. Most of the people, not everyone, but most of them came from the stores. So like store managers that they would bring in to do HR, which was great.
Mhm.
And that was, there was a lot of great things about that, but I also did run into a lot of things that I was like, wow. Like they,
Yeah. Yeah.
you guys know this is like bordering on like getting us in a lot of trouble, right? Like we need to be
Yes.
thinking about this a little
Let's
bit
fix
differently.
this quick.
Yeah, let's fix this. Let's fix this. But also even things like helped fix the talent acquisition process and like what was going on
Mhm.
there and how that was looking and what the process was look like and why it was getting held up and help them really turn a lot of that around as well. So did quite a bit of that there. Left there after about 4.5 years and then went to Monsanto. I'd been trying to get into Monsanto for years, finally made my way in there. And I actually jumped over there because I really did like that analytics part of the job that I was doing over
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
Brown Shoe. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to dig into this a little bit more. And HR analytics was getting very, very hot at that time. And I was like, you know what? Let me go and swim around in this pool a little bit. Like, I know enough to be dangerous. I don't know that I'm a data scientist, but I know enough to be dangerous. And so I went to Monsanto and actually joined their HR reporting and analytics department and started building dashboards for the 400 plus people that were in HR because it was a 20,000 person, 65 country global company.
Mm.
And so I was building dashboards for individuals in HR and then also business leaders so that they could get a chance to really see what was going on with their business. Like one of the first things I built was called the People Scorecard and had
Mhm.
a lot of great information on it, also longitudinal information on it so that we could really understand kind of what was going on in the different businesses. And then training a lot of the people, training the people in HR on it so that they knew how to do it because most of the time HR people aren't the most analytical savvy people. So we had to kind of build up and pump up that knowledge for them a little bit more too. I did that for about 2.5 years. And then we started kind of slowing down on the work of building all those dashboards. And they said, hey, we like you. We're going to stick you in a leadership development program. And oh, by the way, with your analytics background, your HR background, and your OD background, we're curious to see what you could do as an HR business partner in the business. And so they moved me over to biotech. And so I was working in the biotech
Mm.
part of the business at Monsanto, probably some of those controversial parts of Monsanto, of course. But I worked on 4 leadership teams of PhD level scientists. So, really smart people that weren't so smart about people most of the time. But
Oh.
the thing that was very nice about that job is you really had a seat at the table as an HR business partner. Like they didn't make people decisions without me. I was in 10 hours of leadership team meetings a week
Mm.
between the 4
Wow.
leadership teams that I was on. So I mean, and I
Yeah.
did probably
Wow.
spent another 10 to 20 hours a week coaching people, coaching leaders during that time
Yes,
as well.
yes, yes.
And doing a lot of OD work because I could. We had a really small OD department at Monsanto, so it gave me an opportunity to do a lot of OD work in my HR business partner work. So I did
Mm.
that for another couple years, and then it was around that time when agriculture was consolidating and everybody thought that Monsanto was going to buy somebody else. Like we were going to buy Syngenta. I think we were in the process at one point of buying Syngenta because we were number 2. We were like one of the big boys besides Bayer, but Bayer bought us. And so
Mm.
the second day after the Bayer announcement, when I went to Monsanto, I'd also interviewed at a company called Commerce Bank. So they reached out to me and said, "Hey, what's going on with you? Like, is it time to come over here yet?" And so it started the process of a couple months of courting. And they were very, at the time, again, I told you I like to think about what are the experiences I want. I knew the experiences I wanted at that point were to run leadership programs. I wanted to run a team. At that point, it hadn't, I, every once in a while had someone reporting into me, but I wanted to really like run a team and be the leader. And I wanted to make sure that I kind of found those two experiences for me. Like that was important. What was next? And I wanted to feel good about the culture I was going to go work for. So that is when I landed there. So I was like a VP manager of talent development. They were kind of really rebuilding their team. They had a lot of trainers that we wanted to move over to be more like talent or organizational development consultants. They had some challenges with their career development at the time. And also their leadership programs were pretty good. They were pretty solid, but they definitely were dated and they needed some work. And they probably, someone hadn't really stepped back and looked at them from a bigger, broader strategic perspective.
Yeah.
And so they needed some work in that way as well. I had a wonderful experience working at that company. Like it was probably my most prolific and anywhere. When I walked in, they were really wanting to focus on career development. Their career development scores in their engagement survey were like 65%.
Oh.
And I used agile because that was one of the big things that was part of their culture there. So that was another big thing that impacted me a lot in my career was learning the agile process because I to this day now love that. And I think about everything that we do in L&D as products. Everything is a product is the way that I look at it.
Yes.
And that changes my mindset a lot when I'm doing work compared to maybe probably previously when I was thinking about L&D work like that there. So I used agile there with my team and with others that would come in and work on our team. We rolled out like 18 different tools, resources, and programs in 4 years. I had a 4-year strategy map of what this all was going to look like. By the time I walked out of that door, our career development scores were 82%.
Yes, that is amazing. That
Redesign their
is so
leadership
good.
programs, help them think a little bit differently about their leadership pipeline. We added a couple programs while I was there as well. And then I think the team was in a really good spot too when I left. Like they were really a bunch of strong OD consultants. So after I began about a little shy of 5 years, because I don't spend anywhere 5 years, that's when I left there. Spent some time after that at an Australian tech company, Atlassian, if you're familiar with it. Um, good place, good people, just wasn't my scene. And I figured that out probably about 4 or 5 months in that it wasn't going to be the place for me. And so then I started looking for my next thing. And I knew I probably needed to be, the one thing I learned from that was probably a full-time remote role. I don't know. I could probably do it now, but it just wasn't working with me back then. So I probably needed something that was either more in person or hybrid. And so I started looking around St. Louis, very different market than it is right now, and landed at Ameren. And so I was at Ameren for about 3 years. Yeah, about 3 years. And that was also kind of running their learning and leadership development at that organization as well.
That is, sure, you have had a lot of different experiences. I have so many questions for you. We might need to just have another meeting all together and just chat through things because there's just so much going on in my mind. So let me ask you the analytic side of people is something, let's just get into a little bit of business talk because I can't help myself.
Sure.
We're still talking about showing our value, coming from the talent development space. We still can't show our value to the business. You are speaking metrics the whole time you speak, you like from this percent to that percent, we got this up from that. The whole time it's just part of your lingo. It's just how you think, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you think led to your success in moving these teams? So the first one where you left that people dashboard, I can't remember the company. Then you moved and you led a team and you said they were very good OD practitioners. How do you pull a team up, a people team up to be thinking commercially?
Oh, that's a great question. I think this is how I've found that I do this in a lot of organizations because I think that's what I'm really good at. I think I'm really good about getting into organizations, really understanding what's going on with them and what do they need from. I'm like a detective. I want to get in there and understand everything that I possibly can about their learning and leadership development and quite honestly the business and the strategy. And I think a good leader is good at translating that. So if I think about what I really did well at both companies that I've led teams, all three companies that I've been leading teams at, is I'm really good at setting a vision. So, like, where are we trying to go? So once I get in, once I do my research, once I find out what's going on, once I do my needs assessment of the organization, like, what is it that it really needs and wants? And how can we really help move the needle there? And then I usually come up with a vision. And I do this on a yearly basis for any team that I'm on. So we have a vision. So we have the vision for the organization. And then I take the business strategy, if there's any functional strategy for the function of the business, usually HR rolls up to some sort of like support services. Then, like, again, a division strategy, our functional strategy in HR, what does that look like? And then what do I think we need to be working on? What are the goals that we should be having as an organization? And I take that information, have a good conversation with my people. They're part of this process of trying to understand what are those things that we might need to work on. But I translate all of that for them so that they understand, what do I think success looks like? How do we support the business in the right way? And
Mm.
I literally take that down to like looking at, like, based on our organizational goals or our team goals, here's what it looks like from a quarterly perspective. Here are the things that we will be looking at during those quarters that we're probably going to be working on. Here is why they're color coded. So this one is connected to the overall business strategy. This one's connected to our functional strategy. This one's connected to our team strategy. So people understand where they're coming from and how they're connected to those. And then who's involved and who's working on those different things in those different quarters as well. So I do that for every team that I'm in so that they know and can understand very clearly. And I get that all done by the end of the year, usually, or at least early January, so that people can put their development goal, their business and development goals together for the year. And they know exactly what that looks like. So I think that's how I drive like building a good team. I think one of the things I try to help them think through when it comes to the analytics part of this and really understanding our return on investment is, you've got to meet people where they're at. You've got to meet people in their language to be able to help them out. So a great example of this was during my time at Ameren. So in this last year while I was there, there's a lot going on in the energy industry. If you're keeping up with it at all, we all know these AI data centers are coming up. That is a lot of need. Like, what was like maybe most energy companies had, if you were lucky, like a 1 to 2% increase in energy need every year. And most of the time it was less than that. For 20 or 30 years, it looked like that. With data centers and all the electronic equipment we use and now electrical vehicles, but really the data centers being the bigger drive, you're looking at a 6 to 8% increase in need in energy every single year. And so energy companies, and this is the right thing to do, they are spending and over investing in energy generation, as they should be. Because quite honestly, our grid is not ready for this in our country, and we are do not transmitting and making and generating enough energy for this country. We just aren't. We're not even close. And so, because of that, as you can imagine, an environment, this would be any business, they were looking at costs for everything, especially IT costs. Like, were we spending money on things that we shouldn't be? Any organization would do that. But when this last year, unfortunately, our LinkedIn Learning contract was coming up. And so they were like, okay, I was having conversations with our procurement department, and they were like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna, they really didn't give me any insight that this would be an issue. But once it actually made it to the group that was making some of those final decisions, they said, yeah, we're not going to renew the LinkedIn Learning contract. This isn't important. And I said, why is it not important? Because they said learning isn't business critical. And I said, learning isn't business critical. I'm like, that's interesting, because you guys are spending quite a bit of money on building a new training facility for one of the energy delivery parts of the business. So I'm like, training isn't business critical? And they're like, oh. Like, I guess that doesn't make sense. I'm like, probably not.
Yeah.
And so they like, you've got a week, and then you're going to have to go to a big group of individuals, mostly VPs, the CIO, the chief CHRO, I think, was in the room, and also, everybody, the CIO, and then also the top finance person was in the room as well. And they're like, you're going to have to, tell them why we shouldn't get rid of LinkedIn Learning and why this isn't a bad idea. So as an L&D person, you might want to go, well, of course, like, the engagement scores are going to go down. People are going to hate around, they're not going to, it's going to show them that we maybe don't care about development. And, then we're going to lose a whole bunch of people. And like, I could have went down that path. That wasn't going to speak to the language of the people that were in the room. They didn't care about any of that. They were trying to save money. And this was a way to save money. Not a lot of money, but money. And so I went in there after putting a business case together for about a week, and I used AI to be able to pull a lot of this together, which was kind of amazing. It was one of the first big things I really pulled together with AI. And I went in that room and I sat down with all these high level executives and I said, I'm going to tell you what it's going to cost you to get rid of LinkedIn Learning. And they're like, what? I said, I'm going to tell you what it's going to cost you to get rid of LinkedIn Learning. They're like, okay, definitely got their attention. And I said, first of all, let's talk about people that are using it for CEU or continuing education unit credits. I said, okay, if you look at just the people that have CPAs and you just look at the people that have project managers or PMs, I'm like, here's how much it would cost for them to do and get their credits outside of the organization. It's this amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's also 81% of our LinkedIn Learning contract. And they're like, what? They're like, are we doing this enough? Are we using this enough? Should we have a policy that says that people should be using LinkedIn first before they go outside of the organization? I'm like, probably. But I mean, that tells you right there that almost 100% of our contract is already, we're getting that savings by actually using
Mm-hmm.
the CEU version of this. And they're like, I really had them there, but I had more points. So I wasn't going to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I said, and then I said, next, let's talk about pre-certification. So there's pre-certification, similar scenario and
Mhm.
situation. Here's what it would cost outside of the business. Here's what that means it would cost for us. We have LinkedIn Learning embedded in our leadership development program. So there's someone on my team that's going to have to redesign all these different leadership development programs. Here's what that's going to cost. Oh, yeah, by the way, we do a lot of technical training online, believe it or not, do a lot of AI training. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, we do a lot of Excel training. Here's what those types of things would cost outside of the organization. That is now 2 to 2.5 times more than what our license for our
Yeah.
organization is.
Easy.
And those costs are going to disappear into the organization. I'm like, those costs are going to start disappearing into departments and you are never going to see them again. And you're just going to understand why everyone is over budget, especially the
Mm-hmm.
departments that have individuals that need to be certified.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay. And so I walked out of that room with a 3-year license.
Yeah.
I did have to decrease it a little bit because we had field people that weren't using it, which I was fine with.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I walked out of that room with a 3-year license. I went from a no to renew that for 3 years.
Yes. Like, well done. Yes. This is the conversations we all need to be having. What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. That is just so exciting for me. I just love this stuff. So that is so cool. So cool. Um, yeah, I'm so glad I asked that question. All right, Ryan, we are going to, because I mean, honestly, I can chat to you. I'm just looking at the time, just being aware that we don't have that long left to record this. I want to know, in this whole massive career that you've had, all of these experiences, was there one point, one moment, one person that really shifted you, good, bad, whatever the case is, but just a moment that impacted you that you'll never forget?
Gosh, yeah. I actually think it's now, Candace.
Oh.
So I'm on the market at the moment. So I have been on the market for the last 5 months. So I tell everybody I'm a free agent at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a hard market. Like it's tested me because throughout my career, as we can hear, I've had a wonderful career. I've always left one organization to go to another organization, and I've always done it with intentionality. That intentional flexibility we talked about. Like, what experiences do I want? What do I want to go to next? That's not the situation I'm in right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I've been on the market and unemployed for 5 months. So that has been a huge challenge for me. It's been different than anything that I've really, it's tested my patience. It's tested kind of my up and down from an emotional perspective. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to 6 companies. Now I'm down to one. Yeah, the last couple of weeks, I've been the bridesmaid, but not the bride, where I've gotten to the final round and they've chosen other people. So I think learning to really take care of myself in an environment where I've never been in this spot has been probably one of the biggest challenges I've ever had in my career. And I've had bad bosses and I've had all of those things. And I could tell those stories. And up until recently, those are the stories I would have told you here. But I think now, and trying to figure out what I want next, like, do I want to work for a corporation? Do I want to go down the consulting path? I've got the excitement of my book coming out. Does that the path down me not working for an organization anymore? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure some of that stuff out. I still think I'd probably like to work for an organization. I just like working with a team and in an organization and seeing all of that. But I'm going to see it's a rough market out there. Like, I've been searching for 5 months and I've gotten really close a couple times, but just haven't landed yet. And it could be another 4 or 5 months before I really land something potentially. So I think now is probably the most challenging time that I've had in my career.
And you did mention looking after yourself in this environment and during this time. I've been through it. It is really tough. I, doubted everything about myself, all my skills, all my experience. So, yeah, it is very tough. And honestly, many people listening to this will be going through or have recently gone through this exact
Mm-hmm.
thing. So, what are you doing to look after yourself?
I think I've kind of reconnected. One of those things that I've kind of reconnected to is meditation. So I'll start every morning with kind of sitting down. Nobody else is up in the house yet. It's just me and the cats. I usually have already fed the cats. They're already busy now at that point. And just meditate and
Mm,
think a little bit about, speak some affirmations to myself about what I'm going to do and what I need to do. And, that I have a value and I have worth and like I'm going to find my path. And just I need to kind of talk myself up a little bit. I think we all need that sometimes. Some
mm,
days it's more important than others, but I think reconnecting into that has been an important one for me. I've always been someone that likes to work out and exercise and do a lot of that. I've been doing a lot more of that. I've been trying to get out more, and
mhm,
touch grass and be out, smelling and breathing the air out there. I think is a big part of it. I think that helps me out quite a bit too. And
mhm,
then just finding the joy in the things that are going really well in my life, like running the St. Louis Organizational Development Network. I'm the president here in town. Like that
mhm,
is amazing things, and we've turned that organization around with myself and the executive team. My book, like that's been keeping me going and has been very exciting. It's like still doing productive things, even though I know that I may not be as productive in a corporate sense or working in a company like I'm really, really used to being, but I'm still adding a lot of value in the day to day and just making sure that I'm physically and mentally trying to take care of myself.
yeah, yeah, that is good. The lifting, right? Your uh, back to your childhood. Did
Yep.
you did you lift?
That's stuck. It's stuck. Did
Yeah, yeah,
you lift
definitely
before you go
something.
out?
Yeah, lift before you play with your friends.
Yep.
That is funny. And honestly, good on you. I feel like I did not handle that well. It took me a long time. It's actually why I wrote my book. It's a huge part of my book. Part three is the pillars, 5 pillars of agency, which was how I got out of the self doubt and the, really just, yeah, self doubt and not thinking that you're worthy. So, yes, touching grass, it's huge, right? Actually, it is an actual thing. I, I went away last week and I was like, okay, I need my feet in the sand. That's all I need, just my feet in the sand. So, yeah, it makes a big difference. And I just hope you keep on doing that stuff. And, oh, that organization that picks you up is going to be so glad they did, honestly. I can hear your experience. I know the person you are. I know the impact you'd have. Yeah, I've let's say I've never met you, but I've seen you in action. The type of person, and yeah, it's incredible work. All right. So the very final question that I ask all of my guests is to go back in time to young you, and you can choose whatever
Mhm.
age. What would you thank yourself for doing then that really set you up for who you are? Even if you want to thank a person or yourself, anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd go back to probably like teenage me. And I would
Mm,
go back to teenage me and say, thank you for being a development nerd. Like, that's where that love of like learning and leadership development and like understanding like what it meant to be a leader and examining how I was watching leadership through others, even my dad, that like, was a sensei at a martial arts school, and then also like taking the time to like jump in and be a leader myself. Like I was given a lot of opportunity and I raised my hand and I took it a lot when I was younger to be a leader over and over again and to learn those skill sets. So I just thank myself for doing that. I
mm,
would also say when I think about thanking my younger self would be and this part of this is probably thanking my dad too, is like I was pretty unapologetically me. And my dad gave me the comfort and the space to do that and be that,
Mm.
even when I was a little sassy. Because I was again, I was a pretty smart, and also because of my situation, kind of street smart. But
Mhm.
I was confident, probably more than you should be at like 12 or 13 or 14. I remember when my stepmom married my dad. She soon after, in the first couple of years, well, it was still during my teenage years, she was like, he is intellectually intimidating. Like, I actually am sometimes a little scared to talk to him.
Mhm.
Like, and where's he going to go with this? So I think she was smart enough to, at the same time, with him, to say, like, I think that's going to be a good thing for him, so we're not going to squash this. Like, we're going to let him be him. We're going to let him really make sure that he's unapologetically himself, as long as he's not hurting himself or others, but just let him find out who he is and get comfortable in that and be that. And I think that's part of why I am who I am today, was
Mhm.
both of those things and all the different experiences we've talked about, that's like, that I've had in my life, that have made me me.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful environment to grow up in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And it must have been really hard for your dad to have lost your mom at the same time. And then, yeah, have this. Are you only child? Do you have siblings?
No, I was an only child. So yeah, only child. I was 6 when my mom died. So it was just him and I for
Yeah.
almost 6, 7 years before
Yeah.
he found a relationship and got married again, and probably could, because my mom was the love of his life. So that she was the one that really helped him turn around a lot of hard things in his life. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that quite honestly, he's 67. I don't think he's really ever gotten over it. I don't think he will.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, certain things you don't, for sure.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Now, who should get hold of you and why should they get hold of you?
Ooh, I think anyone that cares about being better, being a better leader, being a better manager, being better at their work, being a better teammate. I think those are the people that should probably get in touch with me. They should probably be the ones that should follow me on LinkedIn. Those are probably the ones that should go to quickbitesofinsight.com. Those are probably the ones that should pick up the book. Like, those are the people that should probably reach out to me. Like, that's my real purpose on this earth, Candace, is truly to, I think, to make managers and leaders and professionals better. Like,
Mhm.
I didn't know that when I went and got that IO psych degree, but that's exactly what my purpose on this earth is. And that's why I wrote that book.
Yeah. That is a powerful purpose. Leaders, managers, they have such a huge influence on the culture, on your daily experience in this life, right? And that's why I say people should love their work, because you bring that home. You're a better parent, you're a better spouse, you're a better friend if you just love what you do. And managers and leaders have that impact. Like, I have had a terrible leader, and all I did every night was complain, and that was dinner.
100%.
It's awful. So,
Exactly. I
yeah.
mean, there's a Gallup 2023 study, I think, where they looked at a lot of that and said, like, who are the people that have the biggest impact on someone's emotional well being? And managers came out tied, almost tied, or sometimes a little bit above your spouse or partner.
Mhm.
So take that in. Like, that means that your manager probably has a bigger impact on your emotional well being than your kids, your family, your friends, your siblings, your coach, your mentor, your psychologist, your doctor, everybody, pretty much, except for maybe your partner in life.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's crazy. That's also an amazing, immense amount of pressure when you're a leader. So if you're not a great leader and you are the one that those people are going home and having those horrible conversations every single night, like, you probably don't belong in that role. And you need to be a lot better and get better quicker. And we need to make sure that people are prepared for these things. When you're taking on the role of being someone's manager and leader, it's massive.
Mhm.
And I don't know that we give it the credibility and
Mhm.
the weight that it truly has.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, you are so right with that. Okay, I will have all your links, link to the book, link to your website, all of that stuff in the description. Ryan, it has been my absolute pleasure to speak with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candace. It's been a wonderful talking with you. Can't wait to talk to you again sometime in the future.
Yes, definitely. Bye.